It is the year of our Lord, 2026, and vibe coding is not what it used to be. When we first started out in this world, you sent in a prompt, it gave you code, you moved on, you broke who knows how many policies, maybe even laws as you did it, and yet you got a solution. We're going to look at what it takes to make these solutions last beyond today. Welcome, folks, to this episode of the HiTech Podcast. This is one of your two hosts, William Millingworth, joined by Joshua Swartz on site out in the wild.
Yes, I'm navigating. I got a map. I'm out at the beach, in our classic summer recording series where one of us is gone at some point. I do say,
like it.
I think I did this a little better than Will. I'm not in a closet. I got some lighting this time. Okay, I got a setup and I got a bird.
Oh,
Is that just a reminder, folks? You're listening to the HiTech Podcast, and you are thoroughly just enjoying this high-tech banter that's happening right now. You want to make sure to subscribe. You can find us at all socials at HiTech Podcast or at HiTech Pod. You can also email us at inbox@hitechpod.us if you want to be on the podcast. Let us know your thoughts. You didn't like the bird. I don't know. Whatever you'd like to tell us, you can tell Will at inbox@hitechpod.us, and he'll tell me later at some point. And then you can also check out our website at hitechpod.us, where all of our episodes have fun episode pages, and sometimes we link to fun things that we do and information. So you want to check that out. You can also find information about people that we work with and tools that we think are cool. You can go find that information, figure out how to get started on those things. Now, Will, before we get too much farther into the actual topic of this episode, I feel like we need to talk about something. Okay. Which is
an
that
intervention?
No, it's not an intervention. We were talking about social media, which reminded me.
Oh,
okay?
right.
So not last episode, because last episode we basically just trashed Sam Altman for 50 minutes. Episode 257, if you haven't listened to it, we did tech time travel. And we went back in time, we were talking about tech, and we kind of landed on this idea of what tech we would bring back to save the world, essentially. We were like, well, how could we bring precedented times back instead of unprecedented times?
Yes.
And you and I joked that we thought one of the best ones to bring back would be MySpace, because Tom would have never done to us what Zuckerberg did to us. Folks, I have to say something, okay? Will and I are prophets, okay? And here's why. Within a week of us dropping that episode, I see news that MySpace is coming back, Will. Tom is bringing MySpace back specifically because he wants to be a social media that doesn't have algorithms. Like,
do you remember the full bit and line? So I wanted to validate, because you're right, we were ahead of this. We released this episode on July 28th. The article you sent me was published on August 2nd. So within 5 days, we had predicted what would come.
We scooped MySpace.
No stones to throw here.
We are journalists now.
We should put MySpace in the title of that episode, so it gets pulled into the news cycle.
I just think this is glorious. Tom, if you somehow find this podcast, okay, Will, we gotta mention him somewhere. I don't know. We can't do it on MySpace. It's not back yet. But find Tom and let him know that, Tom, we'd like to talk to you, man. You should come onto the HiTech Podcast. I think it would be hilarious. Also because I just want to know, why is MySpace coming back? What do you want to do differently? Will and I have thoughts. We think you would have never done to us what the Zuck did. So we'd like to know, okay?
You know what Zuck rhymes with? Duck. Like your little duck that you've got there.
That would have been really good if it was a duck. It's a seagull.
They're practically ducks.
It's fine. Anyway, I just thought that was cool. I needed to make sure we called it out in this episode. That Will and I are prophets. MySpace is coming back.
Yeah.
And it's important to know.
This is content that has to stay in the main episode, because we need this to go viral. Like,
this isn't getting cut out. This is not just for HiTech Club members. This is for everybody.
And I have already added featuring MySpace to all of the episode titles. So, if we just get wrapped up, if this is how we went viral and this is how we get famous,
I'll change the thumbnail. You better bet if MySpace comes back, the HiTech Podcast is getting a MySpace immediately.
100%.
It doesn't even matter, and we're gonna HTML the crap out of that thing. It's gonna be great.
We're gonna need some royalty-free music to put up there.
Oh well, we'll just put up our HiTech song because it's such a jam.
There you go. There you go.
That's royalty free. The AI created it. And we well, let's not get into that. Okay.
That's another call talk for another time.
Different topic. Let's talk about something that's maybe less. Well, it's not necessarily less controversial, because people have thoughts on vibe coding. But Will, we've realized we've never really done an episode on AI vibe coding. We've talked a lot about AI in the HiTech podcast, and vibe coding is definitely a popular topic when it comes to AI. If you look up hashtag vibe coding, you'll find out an absurd amount of things. But as I've discovered, even trying to like implement these ideas, it's not as simple as we think to just vibe code stuff. People have strong opinions about it. And even though CEOs think they can replace thousands of people with vibe coding, it turns out vibe coding is a little bit more complicated than that. But it is still a really powerful tool. So we want to talk about how AI can help us in coding, which we've talked about before. If you go back to like episode 197, we did the code breakthrough episode, which is like forever ago at this point.
60 episodes ago. It's nuts.
That's crazy. But we like built stuff on Claude back then. But vibe coding's come a long way, and honestly, one member of the HiTech podcast has come much farther on vibe coding since back then. You started off as a little boy just coding tank games.
Oh my gosh, that is what we did in that, right? That's how
I'm pretty sure that's what we did in that
coding.
episode. Yeah, we'd have to go back and watch it, but I'm pretty sure we demonstrated vibe coding by building tank. Which if you watch that episode, go watch it because it's hilarious.
Well,
because Will ends up building a tank game where the tank floats. It's an example of how vibe coding doesn't always go right.
And takes iteration.
Yeah, it takes iteration. But you've learned a lot about vibe coding since then, Will. So we want to talk a little bit about it, and you're actually kind of going through a process of trying to build sustainable vibe coding into your own workflows.
Yep.
And so let's talk about that. But before we do, Will, define for the audience what vibe coding is, because I think one of the biggest issues in vibe coding is when we say that term, I've discovered everybody has different thoughts on what that actually means.
100%. Yeah, vibe coding compared against traditional coding, right? And a software engineer knows languages like JavaScript, Ruby, Python, et cetera, and they're using those languages to construct a tech stack, a code stack that has all the files that make up an application, right? So it's everything that like handles configuration, authentication, user management, databases, it's all the back end stuff. And without vibe coding, you have to know all of that. You have to have team members, you have your back end developers, front end developers, etc. Vibe coding takes out the need for all of those experts in the sense that AI is very good at writing code. Now, is it very good at making good code? Is it very good at making a safe and predictable app or a good user experience? Like those are all question marks that we put on vibe coding. We hold space for that. But vibe coding can make anyone capable of creating an application. And I want to use that language pretty broadly to start. We'll get a little more specific as the episode goes on, but applications are anything that takes a code stack of any sort and does a functionality for you. So we might think of this platform we're in right now, Descript. This is an application, but it's a single tool we use full of hundreds or thousands of applications still, right? Like just Josh and I seeing each other on screen is an application. It's a function within the tool that communicates his webcam to my webcam, recording the audio, recording the video, giving us a little space to chat, like everything. While we think of and look at a tool like Descript as a single application, it's actually an amalgamation of hundreds or thousands, maybe tens of thousands of applications or functions. So when we come back to vibe coding, it's very easy for someone to sit down with ChatGPT and go, make me Descript, right? You could just say, I want to make Descript. I want to make a competitor to Descript. I could make Zoom, whatever it is, right? When you sit down to do that, and you ask that question, it's going to say, that's a great idea. You really should do that, right? That's what GPT does every time.
Classic AI positivity.
Yep.
You are a genius when the robot just goes off of the internet.
What a great idea. You are so amazing. Yes, we should do this. You're going to make millions of dollars, right? Like it's ridiculous. But what happens once you say that, I want to make Descript, is what you don't know is there's so much work behind that. And while it might be able to just in a sense, run and do that. If you've got a really good agentic tool, if you're using agentic browsers, whatever you have that can do the work, if you're using like as a Claude Cowork or what's their primarily coding kind of solution, Copilot's built into all their, VS Code and all that in Microsoft.
Claude Code is still their thing. Claude Code's now built into their regular chat tool. Claude Cowork can access Claude Code. It's not confusing at all. It's totally fine. Yeah, totally makes sense. Cowork basically is if you want to access your computer. That's what.
Okay, have it use the physical device.
Yeah, how to use the physical device. Code is the whole code building tool.
Yeah. But what happened in the in the growth of vibe coding, right? So when GPT started and everybody starts to do this, everybody's getting into making the coding more predictable, more effective. I started vibe coding the tank game that we built. Like, it's just like, hey, write a prompt. I'm in this tool. I'm using this language. Just give me something. That is fun and it works. Some people end up making little apps for themselves. I know of a colleague through the Candy Factory who moved here from out of town, got a street sweeping ticket within the first couple of weeks or months of living here, and he was really annoyed about street sweeping tickets, and so he vibe coded an app. You take a picture of the street sweeping sign, it marks where your car is, and it sets a reminder to move your car before the next street sweeping thing. Like, great. What did that app take to vibe code? No doubt hours and hours, days of effort. Even though he might have not been writing the code itself, he still had to go through all the things it takes to get an app onto the iTunes store or to Play Store or all these different things. So, vibe coding is truly awesome, but there's so much more to it when you want to make a sustainable long-term product. At the end of the episode, we're definitely going to see something that I've built before. I'm going to reference it. I think I've even shown it on the podcast before, but it's a good example of what this means. When I made my AcroText tool, which is a text blaze replacement, that's what I told GPT. One of my AI tools, whichever one I was using. I use Text Blaze at home. It's an application and extension in my browser that when I type certain short commands, it replaces it with long form text. And I said, I want to remake that. It said, great idea. You're a genius. And so we remade that tool. What goes into that, though, is 5 or 6 little files. I put them in a folder. I upload it to my browser. Done. Then there's some configuration. Maybe it was white on black text, when I first made it. So I gave it some dark mode. I gave it some colors. But I did some development that took a little bit further. Other than that, I haven't touched it in over a year and a half. And it hasn't gotten better. There's no development happening, right? Like, there's something to the fact that what I made was short, it didn't need security, it didn't need a life cycle, but it also hasn't gotten any better. And I'd have to, frankly, keep using it to make it better. When I was previously employed, not my current employer, but when I was working on something before, one of the things about these life cycles, right? So AcroText hasn't gotten better, but like if I make an API, for instance, when I'm vibe coding, some of these problems happen in the short term because I haven't predicted what I'm going to want. I haven't thought through what I need the tool to do. Once I've done steps 1, 2, and 3, it's like, oh crap, I've realized there's a 4th step. Now I need to go back and redevelop this. I had built an API that was doing some data syncs for me when I'd push a button. And I went on vacation. It was working before vacation. I came back from vacation and it stopped working. I did nothing. Nothing had changed. I checked all my logs. I checked the code. No one had gotten in there and touched it on my behalf. Literally, it worked before vacation. It didn't work after vacation. And these are the problems that we come into with vibe coding. I have no idea how it worked or why it worked. So I got really stuck with some of these solutions. The AcroText, that API, like they don't work for you long term unless you make some of these plans. I don't know. Do you all have any sort of vibe coded solutions in your day to day, or is it mostly like long term?
Yeah, I will. Hey, Josh, do you wish this episode was longer? Like there was more time to spend with us?
Be a lot less editing.
That would be super cool, right? Yeah. So like if you're listening or watching and you feel that way too, you should become a HiTech Club member because you get extended episodes. There's lots of other stuff that Will and I talked about. Will and I say dumb stuff all the time. And if you want to hear it on the podcast live, check that out.
You might even hear Will say things he's not supposed to say, which I've edited out never before.
For sure. If you want to hear the unedited version of Josh and Will, become a HiTech Club member. You check that out. You get extended cuts. You get access to vote on future topics. You'll get discount options on merchandise that's coming, and a few other cool things. So go check that out. Links in the bottom description of the episode or someplace on our website, hitechpod.us. Make sure to go check that out and subscribe.
Please and
Become a
thank
club
you.
member. I mean, so I think for us, the vibe coding looks different, right? We're not necessarily trying to build APIs yet, or the guy on our team who would be doing that stuff. It's a long story. We're just too bogged down right now. He has not had time to actually start digging into this. And if you want to know why, you go back to the episode where Will and I talk about building a culture of innovation. If you don't have that in place, it doesn't work great. So in his area, we're working to get that into a better spot. But for us, a lot of the vibe coding has turned into like building interactive stuff inside courses, right? So like we're doing a lot of like learning activity design. And so we're trying to build in more interactive solutions into courses, and we don't have time, nor do we really have the desire to use like Storyline all the time in courses, because it's, Will and I know this. We've talked a lot about Storyline. We like the tool. For those of you who don't know what it is, Articulate 360. It's a very popular tool in learning and development. But it's in a kind of an identity crisis right now, because you can build a lot of the stuff that you can do in those in vibe coding tools, right? And so for us, it's looked a little bit different. Now the problem still exists, right? So the story I tell is we had a team member who started doing this. He started exploring vibe coding. He vibe coded a cool interactive thing for a course he's working in. And so I had him kind of, try to build that culture of innovation. I had him take what he had done and share it in our next role team meeting for that role that was responsible for that area. And it was interesting with people who like tech. I got very mixed reactions from the team initially about these ideas, right? Like some were like, this seems really cool. Others were like, basically wrote it off as like, okay, cool, the AI, another AI thing that AI can do. But like, if we don't actually, and a lot of their issues were, if we don't understand what's going on behind the scenes, how do we fix it if it goes wrong, right? So we don't want to overbuild and overcomplicate things. And those are valid considerations. So what we've been trying to work through is, okay, how do we do this in a sustainable way that's not limiting, but can build something cool and useful and helpful, but we'll still be able to fix, right? And so how do we get buy-in from that space? Yeah, it's kind of what we've been wrestling through and how we deal with it.
I really like that point though, and this actually, we've got a couple of larger problems that play into this overall practice. But when we started vibe coding, nobody cared. You tried to figure it out, and sometimes we kind of got to implement it, sometimes it didn't. Now that we're years into this, the vibe coding tools themselves are better. We can make products that work. The LLMs have gotten amazingly better at code altogether. The problems we face, though, have not changed when it comes to just a project and implementing a new process or tool, right? We've got scope changes, right? One of the things with my AcroText tool, I just want to do little quick things. I just want to type like my name, William, and it would write out my email address or my full name or something, right? I wanted to do these little short commands that would go. But then I wanted to move from device to device. Well, I needed to export and import. It's a local tool, so how do I move this to another device? I needed to create an export import. Scope changes, handover, right? It's really tough to build a tool like AcroText, which is a web browser extension, for free, no effort, no servers, no whatever. How do I hand that to someone else? How do I actually give the tool out and let people use it? At the same level, how do I maybe, if I'm the owner of it and I'm going to stop owning it, how do I hand it over to someone else? And this is actually something I think, GitHub is critical for in this world. But if you don't know what GitHub is or how to use it, I don't know how to use it. I know what it is. It still doesn't work. So that's a big problem with the life cycle of a tool like this. Documentation. How does it work? How do we make it work better? How does someone configure it? Like these are things we don't think about, but become significant problems in creating a tool today for something more than a novelty situation. What if you change your platform? What if my AI tool changes? What if I built this and I was in a Microsoft ecosystem and now I'm in a Google system? What do we do there? How do we get the buy-in? Josh's team was kind of wrestling with that, right? Like they've got generally very tech enthused folks. They've got an instructional technologist team, technology. But how do you get that buy-in? And that's something I've faced at my new job. It's something where there's a lot of support or openness to AI, but what's secure, what works well, what works for our clients, etc. And there's a cost to these, even if it's vibe coded and we didn't have to pay 10 software engineers and a security specialist and all the different stuff salary to get it made. I have to put time into it. The times that I've done vibe coding, it can take me 8 hours of effort to get to a prototype. That's not nothing in a day-to-day job where that's not my job. If my job is to support clients or be in a learning management system and I'm over here vibe coding, I need authorization, or I need, leadership support, company support, to be spending that 8 hours on something that's not my client or not the day-to-day work that we're required to do. These are the problems that I've faced, that we faced it generally. Is anything you think that you'd add or color you'd add to that, Josh?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's the same things. It's how do you pass this off? How do you do it sustainably? How do you fix it if it breaks, right?
Yeah.
And okay, AI can help in those areas, but like, as we've noticed, especially if you're not a coder, which is what I think really matters in this conversation. There's two different elements of vibe coding. There's the people who are like already professional coders. They've already been trained. They're using vibe coding, and that these types of tools are helping them speed up what they're doing.
Yeah.
But there's those of us where Will and I's focus really is those of us who are not formally trained in this area, but we know just enough to want to be able to do something with this. How do we do it in a way that's not just a fun novelty for ourselves, but we do it in a way that's actually like giving back ROI, so to speak? Like how do we do this in a way that's like actually giving us a return on what we're doing, and in a way that we can manage and that's secure and it's helpful? That's what our team's really been wrestling through. It's like, okay, how do we do that in this space and leverage it well? And I've seen some different stuff, but I'm curious. Okay, we've got these issues. So you've been trying to tackle this then. How do you deal with this in a sustainable way in your space? What's been some of the stuff that you've kind of been doing to take a step by step through kind of process? And again, just a full acknowledgement, Will and I are not professional coders. We're not, there's somebody who's going to listen to this episode. We even have friends who might listen to this episode and tell us something we've gotten wrong. Where this is just us working through live kind of what Will's been doing, what I've been kind of roughly experiencing, because I'm starting to get into this space. But like, what have you been doing?
The first decision that I would encourage folks to make when they're addressing vibe coding is their audience. So all of the vibe coding I've done, I've intended for myself or for my team, right? A local internal team. It's not something that I'm putting out there for the public. I'm not making that street sweeping app. If you are making a tool you plan to sell, you want to be public, whatever, I would definitely first tell you that you need to get into almost more like the legal and policy things. You need to go figure that side out, because iTunes, Apple, and Google have requirements for what your apps can do. If you're going to sell something on the internet, it's got to have requirements. Like that's something I have not touched. So I want to put that into context. What we're about to go into is if your audience is, let's say, private, or it's your business specifically. In the past, what I've done is just I'm me, and I told it, hey, write a code for me and let's go, and that worked. Today, I'm working on a project that'll be a long-term project, and the project's going to outlive me in the context, right? So I'm not going to be there to run it forever. And so what I've decided to do is try and be as intentional with the development as possible, so that everything is created on a good foundation and can be modular and reusable beyond me. The first thing I did to accomplish that, build an agent, right? I know that something I'm going to do with this is bringing some of my knowledge, is bringing some of my personality, it's bringing some of my interests. So I didn't build myself, but I built an agent that's like, security is a priority. We don't pass tokens through in plain text, blah, 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 blah. A lot of the things that I've been learning about vibe coding, I built it this agent. I told it it's an expert in coding. I told it's a front end, told it's back end, all this stuff. But by building that agent then, and refining it as I go, I have been adding the instructions and modifying it as I'm learning things working with it. My hope would be that if someone needs to work on this tool beyond me, they can go to this agent, and I can even backfill it with information on the prompts that I've given it in the past, give it examples of successful things we've done, right? I can make this agent the vibe coding Will that lives beyond Will. And that kind of sucks.
So you're going the Iron Man move, right?
Yeah.
Except you're trying to build a good Ultron. like a
yes.
helpful Ultron.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a shield for humanity that destroys humanity. It's
yeah, you're building a vision.
Yes,
you're building.
Vision.
Okay,
Vision.
cool.
But once I got that agent in place, the very first thing I did was I spent probably a whole 2 hours just working on architecture. I didn't even get into platforms. I didn't even get into code. Um, I was building this agent and then I was building the architecture saying what my goal is. My goal is to have an API between Docebo and Microsoft Excel. Don't flinch. Don't have an aneurysm. I know that's a tough one for you.
I can live with this. It's fine. And considering the new acquisition of Airtable, Excel seems great. It's fine. No.
Airtable got bought.
Oh yeah, they got bought. It's fine. Everything will be fine.
We'll have to do a whole episode on that then. But that's the goal is to make this thing. But that API needs to be able to do extraction of data. It needs to pull data from platform. It needs to push data into the platform. It has to do the full data lifecycle. And what I told it is, it's not just the agent, for instance. What I told it is, it's not just a push pull. I'm not just going to put data in a spreadsheet. It's going to be a management tool. So this tool needs to not only have the functions I build into it, but it has to be scalable to add functions over time. And that architecture stage involved conversations about security with the tool, right? I told it what my platform is. I told it how the institution works. I told it all the stuff that's going on. So that's a significant part of the agent, but I need it to then take that and make that consistent through all of the design. What that means immediately is, compared to one of my earlier projects with an API like this, I use like 2 or 3 variables. And if you're not familiar with variables, folks, go back to math class, right? Algebra. But beyond that, algebra or variables are used in coding to hold data across code stacks, right? So if I need the name of the institution to be in 100 different places, but the name of the institution could change. It could be in one place ABC, it could be in one place ABCD, but there's always going to be ABC, right? And that's very common actually in US business. Like we have Harness Tech as our LLC behind this business. Legally, it is Harness Tech, LLC. So if we want the legal name, it is Harness Tech, LLC. If we want the doing business as name, we can drop the LLC. Well, we might make a variable then that is legal business name. And anywhere we put the legal business name, it will put the LLC throughout the code stack, throughout what the user sees on the front end, throughout what we see on the back end. Those variables, though, are much more important when it comes to transferring data, holding credentials, like authentication and security features. My architecture resulted in, I think, 26 variables for this project. We planned the architecture out so that it would know I'm not just going to ask once to get a report of courses. It knows I might change courses, I might change learning plans, I might change users, I might change channels, catalogs, groups, platform settings. I might need to do uploads of data. I might need to throw 1,000 thumbnails into the platform. It knows I've built all this architecture. It knows that it needs to have that much flexibility in the long-term architecture of the platform. And instead then of, a single API that is like a one stack of code that could be 1,000 or 2,000 lines long, what we did is, and this was a part of working in the Microsoft enterprise, but what I did with this architecture was I built multiple architected solutions that work with each other. And that's coming back to what I was saying earlier about Descript, right? We're looking at one tool called Descript. And when I'm done with this thing, I want someone to look at this one tool that manages Docebo. But when it goes in the background already, and I'm only working on authentication still, I have 3 interrelated flows that are working inside of Power Automate. And I predict it's going to be at least 10 different flows that'll run this tool in the back end, each one doing something different and operating with each other. So they're calling each other, they're putting requests against each. And why I say this is there might be a single flow to get data out of the platform. There might be a single flow to put data back in the platform. There might be a single flow to edit data that's in the platform. Whatever it is, each of these might become their own flows, but they become then modular. And as I'm doing this, what's happened in the past is I just kind of had, Google write me a full script, And if something wasn't working, I said, this isn't working. And it would say, okay, change line 84 to this, change line 200 to that. With this project, because I've architected it in this such a way to have all these different little applications that work together, when something breaks, it's telling me and it's teaching me through each individual application, right? So if I have to fix something with get, I go and work on that one get app. If I have to fix something with configuration, I go to the configuration app. If I have to fix something with authentication, I'm in the authentication app. All of these to the end user will look like one thing when it's done, but I'm building this on all these different modules that is making it work in some ways better, but also it's teaching me a lot about the coding as I'm doing it. You look like you've got a question, a thought.
No, I think this is helpful. This is all
cool.
No, I think it's a helpful breakdown. I think it's all about, and it comes down to what we've talked about with AI before. It's all about defining things well. It's about defining what you're doing, how you're doing it, and putting in those definitions and thinking about stuff from ahead of time. I think that's the key. A lot of people's experience, in my opinion, with vibe coding or AI in general, when it doesn't go the route they want it to, is mostly because they didn't define what they were putting into it well to start, right? Yep. And I think that's a lot of the problem. And so I think a lot of when it comes to vibe coding, what you're doing now is you've learned more, and so you're trying to define that well, whether it's the variables, it's how the data is being used, what the ultimate goal is in those areas. And you're helping with documentation by creating an agent who knows how this works, right? Now, what I thought was interesting is you shared one of the other routes you're going is that you're having AI teach you how to do the work. So you're not necessarily having it do all the work for you. You're having it teach you what to do so that you know more about how it's actually working and functioning.
Yeah, and there's a difference too, I guess, in platforms. Like when I've done this in Google, you use Google App Scripts, and you can make these applets. You can make multiple little code stacks that interwork with each other. But when I first started doing it, it didn't tell me that. It didn't say there was an option. So I gave it a prompt. I want a tool that does blah, blah, blah. And it wrote a stack of text that was like 3,000 lines deep. And that was the app. I didn't have to do anything. Copy, paste, right? And like I said, if something didn't work, it won't let me log in. It won't pass this. I need to add a function. It would just rewrite the code for me. Right now, I'm working in a Microsoft environment, and I'm using Power Automate. So Power Automate is a middleware, and what it does is if there's a function that you're going to do, there's a feature inside the platform for it. So if I want to compose text, if I want to parse JSON, if I want to make an HTTP call against something like to a server, I need to make all these little modules, which is taking that 3,000 lines of text in Google World and breaking it out into chunks of 10 and 5 and 6 and 12 and 15, right? So I've got, just to authenticate someone is, I think, a 6-step flow that has to call the platform. It has to validate credentials. It has to check and make sure that the server's up. It has, it's kind of a little Plinko. And so every time I hit run an import or pull data, it calls that app first, and that app has to run its 6 steps. And so to write each of those steps, yes, it gave me the code for them, but it had to tell me what to do and teach me. And it's like, oh, now I know why this is, I'm putting in the URI because that's specifically calling to the endpoint. I know what these header points are and what the body's doing because that's where it's holding the data. And that's where I need to put my variables, which is calling over to my actual credentials so that the variables aren't in my code stack, or the credentials aren't in my code stack, like all these different things it's teaching me as I'm doing. But I drove this way because I had done this before. I know that these are problems that I've run up against when it wasn't working in the Google world, et cetera, right? So it's really both it teaching me because I knew to ask the questions. And that's part of, I think, what's tough with vibe coding. If you don't know what's important about it, you can really fall into some pitfalls, that you're not expecting with security, with maintaining the tool over time. This does bring me back to, like I built one agent, but a friend, and again, this is he's considering it for a public context, but he wanted to build an app. And so he built a fleet of agents. He's got a penetration test agent for security. He's got a developer agent. He's got a UX UI agent. He's got this team of agents that is helping him develop his app, right? And he knows what he's got a lawyer bot right? Like he has everything he needs to try and check this thing
Yeah.
as much as he can before it ever goes live to the public. Mine, I omitted some of that because all I'm doing is working for an internal team. But my agent, I decided to conflate. You know, I built this to be a software engineer that knows the product end to end and can document it. So the end result will not only be all that I've worked on, but everything that's going to come out of it for the handover from me to other team members long term.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's lessons learned. It's asking the right questions. It's also having the right goal in mind. I know I like security. I know I like reusability. I know it needs to be modular. I know the problems I've run into with my little apps before, and we'll see that in a few seconds. But like some of us will see that in a few seconds if you want to join the HiTech Club. That's one of the parts of this that I think is really tricky, but also why it energizes me to try this stuff out, because anyone can make any app they want to. That's what vibe coding's there to do.
Yeah.
Can you do it well?
Yeah.
And will it survive you? That's the bigger question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would encourage you, before we jump into this next part, I would encourage anybody, as Will said, like Will and I are talking about this from like a private, both of our uses are private, even though the core stuff I'm talking about using, we're not talking about like releasing any API related stuff at a public level with people. So most of this is private area. I would encourage you to start small, play around with some stuff, and just kind of start coding some small things. One of the small areas you could start, both Will and I started in these areas, was messing with like Chrome extension stuff. They're limited. You can't do the level of what Will's talking about, but it's a good starting place to kind of just learn how you leverage some of these tools to build certain things. And Chrome extensions are small, usable ways you can feel some actual return on what you're doing in your own Chrome environment. All right, folks, that's a wrap on another week. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech. Cheers.
Cheers.
Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Future's